We have another speaker after this. He is Professor Earl Goetheer from the TU Delft. And this is a replacement lecture on the carbon storage and capture from yesterday, which he wasn't able to attend. Yeah, we're happy to have him with us to be able to showcase his research today, thankfully. Thank you both for the presentation, and I hope that Professor Goetheer can also have like a similar, very informative session about carbon capture as he did last time.
Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you, Martin, and thank you, Mr. Professor Putra.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye. Professor Earl, are you there?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
You can hear me?
Yes, yes. Hello.
Perfect. Perfect. There's always a challenge when it's going to Zoom instead of Teams. I'm very happy to be here and talking about one of my favorite topics. So I will share my screen. One moment.
Yes, yes, yes. Of course.
So I hope you can see my screen now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, who is afraid of CCS? Little bit of a joke regarding the who's afraid of red, yellow, and blue, or in this case, yellow. Fred, because when I talk about carbon capture, it's a lot of emotions are there. When you go to the person on the street and saying, guys, we are going to capture CO2 and we're going to store the CO2 underground. Not that often I get a big cheers and applause of that. So it's a lot of cold feet related to carbon capture and storage for it. And what I would like to today is not going really in depth of the technology, but with pleasure. You can, if you have questions later on, with pleasure, I can go very deep in how you can do it. But much more talking about the different myths which are surrounding the field of CCS, and trying together with you, trying to discover, is this really a myth or is there a truth in it? Now, first of all, a small introduction. I've been working for more than 25 years on the field of CO2. I did my PhD a long time ago on the uses of carbon dioxide. And at that moment in time, I said two things to myself after reaching my PhD. I said, one, I don't want to work anymore with CO2 because this is a very small molecule. I've seen it after 4 years. And the second thing is, I don't want to be working at academia. In both of these things, I was quite wrong because I'm still working on the field of CO2 clearly, and I'm still connected to the academia, and this time as a part-time professor. The rest of my days I spent as a CTO at a venture building company that's called High-Tech Excel. Yeah, let's start the journey of carbon capture. And for me, of course, you can put different moments in time you can say this is the start of the journey, but let's start with Arrhenius, who said in 1896, guys, it will be getting quite warm. And by the way, the niece of Arrhenius is Greta Thunberg, so they keep it nicely in the family. But you can say, yeah, this in a very, let's say, yeah, dusty journal that has been published. Did we know about it? Now, even even in 1912, in the newspaper of New Zealand, people were saying, guys, we are going to put so much coal, burning so much coal, we put all the CO2 in the air. And that will relate to a blanket and will raise its temperature. And by the way, this effect will be considerable in a few centuries. So there was a paper in 1912 already saying exactly what is going on. And then you can say, guys, this was a paper in 1912 in New Zealand, but I can as well show you a paper from the Apeldoorn's newspaper, and believe me, Apeldoorn is not a big city, saying exactly the same things. It was a paper in a little bit above 1930, saying exactly the same things. It will be getting warmer. Yeah. So we know it already for quite some years, and it's very hard to deny it. And at this moment in time, if you go to Hawaii, there's a nice mountain where we measure the CO2 concentrations. And you can see it, I looked up this morning, 425 ppms is currently the amount of CO2 in the air. And I always get the question, yeah, ppms, what is that? And I always say that's the same thing as going to a city like Amsterdam and finding 400 persons with one leg, because that's 400 parts per million. Amsterdam is roughly 1 million inhabitants. And it will change dramatically the society that we're going to live in. And I'm a chemical engineer, so I can talk about, of course, about houses and cars, but let's talk about the industry, because that will change dramatically for it. And now we see as example, a beautiful site in Germany, Ludwigshafen, and I like this kind of sites. Beautiful. If you go to Rotterdam, you can see the same kind of things. And I'm trained like that. I'm trained as a chemical engineer to build factories like this. But I can say to you, in the next 20 to 30 years time, all these things are going to be gone, and hopefully, let's hope so, replaced by something else for it. So in your lifetime, you have to change complete factories like this for it. And it is not something that we have a silver bullet for it. There is not something like this nice dinosaurs are going to say, now we need a magic bullet to deflect our asteroid. That doesn't happen for it. So if you look from an industrial perspective, we need to do several things. There's not one thing. To really transform society like Ludwigshafen or Rotterdam or Geleen or Douw en Terneuzen, we need to do several things for it. And a shift to renewable feedstock, think about using biomass. Shift to renewable energy, think about electrification and using that for making, for instance, hydrogen. Doing things smarter, always with the process efficiency. The fourth element is circularity, bringing things back into a loop. And the fifth element is carbon capture and storage. Sometimes people call it CCUS, carbon capture utilization storage. I don't like it. For me, carbon capture and utilization and carbon capture and storage are two different animals with two different rationale why to do it. But these are basically our tools. And just like a carpenter, you can't be a carpenter with only a hammer. You can't build any houses with that. The same things is true for these kind of techniques which we are talking about. So please do not do cherry picking. If you have these 5 different technologies, the 5 different directions, use them all. If you say, guys, I don't like this kind of technology, the same thing as going to a soccer team and saying, guys, I don't like you. Let's take them off the field. And what will happen then, you will only have a team of 10 players, and most likely you will lose the match for it. And you can even see it in a different way. Let's go further with the analogy of soccer. You have always the people making the goals. And in this case, is process efficiency is something that is in the forefront of our team, because you can do it now and you can get a business case out of that. So doing things smarter is really in front of that. So the renewable feedstock, the electrification and the circularity, these are things which is more in the middle. But in a defense, we have carbon capture and storage. It's like in a defense. Why is it in defense? Because I can use it nowadays with the current installation which we're having. We can put something behind it, and it's called post-combustion capture, capturing CO2 from the flue gases. Or we can do a kind of a pre-combustion capture system where you capture the CO2 before the burning. You can do all kind of things, but often you can do it with on the existing infrastructure. And so it is much more in a defense. But even with these 5 different technologies, we are not going to make it. So if somebody is going to say to you, we are going for 1.5 degrees Celsius, hell no, you're going to be extremely lucky if you are around 2 degrees Celsius. And that will be already really very difficult. So we need something else. We need a goalie. And so what is in the goal? Negative emission, carbon dioxide removal, basically capturing CO2 from the air and storing it permanently away. Why do we need that? Because we are going to overshoot like crazy. And everything is we put in the air, So I'm now exhaling, that's 4% CO2 in my breath that will stay there for hundreds of years in the atmosphere. So all the CO2 which we are now emitting, and you have to get it out of the air. Not me anymore, I will be retired. But you have to get it out of the air. And already said, 400 parts per million is the same as a city like Amsterdam getting 400 parts per million. So you have to imagine finding 400 persons with one leg in Amsterdam and bring them together in one room. You can imagine how much energy that will take. So when we talk about direct air capture, things like these are very nice topics, and I work on them. Brilliant topics. But it's a little bit like hiding yourself and hoping that our children will solve our problems for it. And then we can keep on emitting. That's not how it's going to be. That is not a smart strategy because it's going to be extremely painful and extremely costly. So we need drastic actions now. And for having these drastic action, we need all these players. So let's play a game of Mythbusters. So you all have seen the series of Mythbusters. Let's do a special on carbon capture and storage and trying to tackle 5 typical mentioned myths or facts. Let's go and develop. Let's see that together. So the first one is carbon capture is unproven. Now you can hear that a lot. So we don't know how it works. This is just a test. Is it really true that's unproven? So at this moment in time, there is around 40 megatons. And let's put it like there. Here around 40 megatons of carbon capture plants worldwide available. Now, is this a lot? 40 megatons? Nah, not that much. So the Netherlands is now roughly 150 megatons of CO2 emissions. So let's say 1/4 of the Dutch emissions is captured by carbon capture storage. And many of these carbon capture storage projects are not in Europe. They are typically in the United States, where they store the CO2 in oil fields. Not because they like to store oil, not because they like to store the CO2, of course not. What they would like to do is capture more or produce more oil. So it's called enhanced oil recovery. So you capture CO2 and you pump it under the ground and you push out the oil. So that happens a lot in the United States. But if you go a little bit closer to home, this is already happening from 1996, where there's CO2 co-produced with natural gas, and it is stored in an aquifer in Norway. And already more than 20 megatons of CO2 has been captured and stored underground for it. So yeah, is it proven? Yeah, yes, it is proven for it. The capture part is proven, and we know how to capture it, we know how to transport it, and we know how to store it. But is it already developed on a large scale? Not really. So we are around 40 megatons, and according to the IEA, we need to be 2 orders of magnitude higher. So you can imagine the amount of scale up that is still needed for it. So myth 1, CCS is unproven. No, it is proven. We know how to do it for it. Second myth, is it unsafe for it? Now, let's go back to what is carbon capture and storage. Now, first of all, you have to capture it. Then you need to transport it, and then you need to store it. Now, capturing is just like any chemical factory. We know how to build chemical factories for it. So that's not a point of concern, really not. Transporting of CO2, either by pipeline or by ships in the form of liquid CO2, we are already doing that for 40 years. There are thousands of kilometers of pipeline, especially in North America. So you know how to transport it. Then storing it. Yeah. Now, basically what we are doing is the reverse. So in the Netherlands, we have a lot of discussion about empty gas fields where we want to store the CO2. So in these fields, millions of years, methane has been there. And the reason why in millions of years methane has been there is because you have all kinds of cap rock on top of it. It's basically seal the location where millions of years natural gas has been trapped under it. So in the Netherlands, we have laystone, hundreds of meters of thickness, which prevents the methane, or in this case, the CO2, to get it out for it. So yes, we know how to store it. We know it can be done safe. Of course, if you're going to put too much pressure into the field, you can blow off your caprock. But we know what the historical pressure was of that field. So we know what not to exceed for it. So yeah, we can do it quite safe. The third myth, as I often hear, it is too expensive. Yeah, but what is too expensive for it? So if you, these are numbers coming from the United States, but they're roughly similar in Europe. Of course, if you want to capture direct air capture, that is quite expensive. This is in dollars per ton of CO2. That is really expensive. I already said, please, let's limit that as much as possible. I don't want to capture CO2 from the air. It costs a lot of money, so let's try to do it right now. But if you look at a different place where you can capture CO2, like in the power generation or the cement or in the steel, typically 1 ton of product captured and transported and stored, we are talking about around €100 per ton of CO2. Is that expensive? Yeah, that is something more difficult to answer. So let's go back to the cases of cement. So that is the price of current cement, unabated. And if you want to do CCS, our price increases with 30–40% of it. The same holds true with steel. This is the current price of steel. And if I want to capture my CO2, we are looking again at 30–40% increase. And if you want to go to hydrogen, that's even more expensive. So, but yeah, that's not the price which we are paying. So I'm very happy that one of my colleagues, Andrea Ramirez from the Technical University of Delft, together with colleagues from Norway, they made a beautiful study looking at, is carbon capture really so expensive? And he said, let's make it very practical. Let's focus on a bridge. So for a bridge, what do we need? We need steel, we need cement, we need a lot of construction work for it. Let's try to see what will happen with the cost for it. So they took everything into account. Upstream, the cement production, transport, mixing, the building, all to build a bridge for it. And of course, I already said, yeah, the prices of the raw materials increases quite a lot. 60% in this case for cement and 20% for steel for it. But if you look at the final product, the bridge, the price increase was only 1%. Just 1% the price increase for it. And for what is 1% price increase for it, we had a reduction of our CO2 footprint with 50%. Only 1% in price increase. The same holds true if I would have a car coming with a CCS-based steel. Your price of the car will increase in a couple of percent. Not a lot, but it has a major impact on the amount of CO2 that is there. So is it too expensive? Nah, I don't think so. So that's positive. Now, myth number 4, CCS prolongs fossil life. You get this kind of nice quotations. Carbon capture, a dead sentence for the planet. That's a scam, basically. For it, look, we promised this for it, but reality, we capture this part for it. Yeah, there's a part of truth in it. So because we can do carbon capture storage, fossil plants will be still in operation. But what is the alternative? I already said, do not do cherry picking, because the alternative is who's going to produce your cement? It's going to come from China or another place who's going to bring you that CO2, that cement. And of course, you can say, we don't produce CO2 here in the Netherlands, but all the products which you import come with a CO2 penalty just as well. For it. And then you can say, yeah, there will be new technologies coming up. Yeah, but it will take some time before it will be implemented at this scale for it. Think about the challenge that you are having with wind energy for it. How fast can we deploy that for it? So it will be very difficult. So you need to be serious and talking about the time factor which comes in play. And if you say, guys, we will wait till these technologies are there and scaled up, yeah, but at that moment in time, you're still emitting that CO2 because you still need cement, you still need steel, as an example, for it. And later on, you have to get it out of the air. Very expensive. For it. But what's now going on is that we are putting 3 elements together on one big pile. And the pile is confused a little bit because you have 3 different drivers. get the climate. For the climate, basically it is all about CO2 and methane and all these kind of greenhouse gases. If you just limit those kind of things going to the atmosphere, you're okay. But then you have the energy transition, where people saying, yeah, let's move away from fossil. And the third thing which people are saying is you have to have clean air. Think about removal of NOx. But these are three different drivers. And now we put everything on one big pile, but you really have to deconstruct in these different drivers to really understand what's the best thing to do. And then the last myth, there is not enough capacity to store. And our friends from the geological department have studied this a lot and looked at different locations to put in. So in the Netherlands, we talk about empty gas fields, but you can store it in aquifers, you can store it in empty oil fields, you can store it in so many places. And in the North Sea, only at the North Sea, there's at least 200 gigatons of capacity. Right. Now, what does a gigaton mean? Eh? So worldwide, currently at this moment in time, a worldwide emission of CO2 is 30 gigaton per year. But look at the other reserves all over the world. The reserves are there for decades or we can store our CO2. So basically, in conclusion, we have 5 myths, where one, like CCS, is prolonging fossil, but there's a sense of truth in it. The rest, I think, these are myths. Now, what I think will happen in the next coming 10 years, already that fast, you will see a massive amount of projects going to be launched. In the Netherlands, Portos in Rotterdam will be going basically to completion for it. You will see Aramis, which is as well on the North Sea from the Dutch coast, another project. But the front runner is Northern Lights. It's a project in Norway, which already has been funded for it, where people can transport the CO2 as liquid CO2 in the form of a ship, bring it over there and store it in an aquifer. And then as an example, Yara in the Sluiskil, so has already said by 2025, 2026, we would like to bring 800 kilotons per year of our CO2 over there to be stored. So I think all lights are on green, at least for now, for carbon capture and storage. And just because we are all engineers, I would like to give you just one more example of the things that are happening in the Netherlands. Because in Europe, the Netherlands and Norway are the leading countries related to carbon capture and storage for it. And one of the nicest examples I can give you, and you can, for the people who are going often to Arnhem, this is location in Duiven at AVR, so waste incinerating plant. For it, they are currently capturing CO2 from their flue gases. So it's a 100 kiloton scale plant where they're capturing CO2 using post-combustion capture technologies and bringing it to the horticulture. And just 2 seconds to show you what's happening. The first column over here, they cool the flue gas down to a temperature, let's say 40 degrees Celsius. The cooled flue gas is brought into the second column over here. There's the absorber, where an amine water wash is used to wash out the CO2 in a counter-current fashion. The loaded amines is sent via heat exchanger to a third column, the stripper, where it falls down, and the bottom is heated up. And because of the temperature, the CO2 is driven off and leaves the column over here. Then it is compressed and liquefied and stored in these tanks over here. This is, at this moment in time, the biggest waste to energy scale CO2 capture plant. So with this, I would like to thank you for your time. And I know carbon capture storage, that is not a swan. That is just plain ugly for it. It's just being the truth. It is plain ugly. But even ugly ducklings have a right. And I think in this case, this ugly technology, or this ugly feeling around this technology, is really essential to be deployed. Otherwise, we will be way, way above the 2 degrees Celsius for it. And we later on have to pay the ferryman for it. And at the end, I just would like to give you this quote from an oil minister from Saudi. He already predicted at least that the end of fossil will come for it, because we will get something better. But to go to that field, to go to something better, we need intermediate technologies. And carbon capture and storage is one of these immediate, let's say, intermediate technologies to making the bridge to something better for it. So with this, I'm very happy that I could still give this talk to you, and I hope you found it interesting.
Thank you, Earl. Thank you so much, especially for coming in and giving us this amazing talk. Unfortunately, we have time for 3 questions that can be addressed due to lack of time, because we're already off schedule a bit.
Sorry.
So I'll start right now, if you don't mind. What portion of the cost is represented by storage, transportation, and capture in the price of distribution? In the price distribution of CSS?
Nice question, dirty question as well. Because in the past we always say storage is not that expensive. But looking from a realistic point of view, if you look to Portos in Rotterdam, for it, the storage part is around 50 euros per ton. So the capture part, because they capture it from hydrogen plants, that is around 20 euros, 25 euros per ton for it. And the transport is part of the storage in this case. So in total, they can do this for $75 75 euros per ton. If you go to the location which I just showed you, the AVR case, because the scale is much smaller, and it's a different type of technology, the cost for capturing could be 60, 70, 80 euros per ton, or even higher for it. But there, the CO2 is not stored in the subsurface, but is used in the hot water, and they get money back for it. If you would like to bring your CO2 to Northern Lights for it, that costs around, most likely around 100 euros per ton. For it. So it's not cheap, definitely not. But the alternatives are even more expensive.
Yeah. What is the most represented? Which is the most difficult cost to handle in that sense? In a scenario where we completely, that is the follow-up question that I have.
Okay. So yeah, you have different types of systems to remove your CO2. The closest implementation is called post-combustion capture. So you capture CO2 after the combustion process. That is around this 50 euros per ton, depending on the scale. For it. So that's really rather expensive for it. Now, what is more expensive is, of course, you need to be able to transport it to that location. So in Antwerp, they got a lot of money from the EU to building an infrastructure to be able to transport this CO2 for it. And this whole transport cost, with the only investment which they got now is 200 million, which is by far not sufficient for it. So transporting as liquid CO2 is really expensive, even more expensive, I think, than the capture part. In the past, we always say the other way around. By the way, one of the reasons why storing an empty gas field, because that's what we're going to do in the Netherlands, has some cost, is because an empty gas field is never empty. There's always still some natural gas in it. So the field owner will say, yeah, you can store it in my field. But if you put CO2 in it, I can't get any methane out of it. So you have to pay for me significant amount of money. Yeah, what they don't say is that they were never able to produce it. But yeah, still, methane is still there, and you have to pay for it. So that's one of the problems.
I see. So another question that we've asked in a scenario. Oh,
That's bad.
Had a problem with her mic.
At least I'm awake. No, don't be. I'm definitely awake now.
Perfect. In a scenario where we completely phase out natural gas in the long term, is the existing natural gas infrastructure sustainable for transporting CO2?
Oh, I don't think so. I think I don't. So on the North Sea, there is some empty, let's say oil pipeline, gas pipelines which can be reconverted. But often it's not going to the right directions for it, and you need to upgrade them to be able to handle CO2 for it. So I think in many of these cases you have to build a new pipeline infrastructure. It sounds nice, but you can reuse it, but in practice it's a little bit disappointing for it. I'm sorry for that.
Mm-hmm. It uses a lot of what did you What do you say? If you can repeat, because we didn't
Oh,
hear
I'm
you.
sorry. At this moment in time, there's a lot of gas fields in the North Sea, which is gradually going out of commission for it. And in principle, you can reconvert these pipelines to CO2. For it. It is possible. But often these pipelines are not at the good locations, and often you have to reconvert them. And sometimes the reconversion cost can be much higher than just laying new pipelines for it. So I think to the end of the day, if you look at the projects currently going on, they're all new build pipelines.
I see.
Oh, I see a lovely question. Can I start with that question for it? Because the question was just popped up from Yaxi. I'm sorry for that.
Yaxi, yes.
Yaxi,
yes.
she's asking, are carbon capture technologies circular? Meaning more carbon is being produced by producing wind and solar equipment for the energy we get back in comparison to all. It's a nice question for it. If I look at building windmills and what is it on the North Sea, you can call that the carbon debt which they have. You pay off in 2 years, 2 to 3 years. You pay your carbon debt off related to the amount of steel and cement which you have put there for it. So of course, if you look at life cycle analysis, wind energy is never zero CO2 per unit of energy, never for it. Because of the cement and steel, but you compare to the old technologies, you pay it off quite fast. Now, is then carbon capture technology circular? Now, that is sometimes a cheeky thing because I sometimes use this as a way to lure people on the wrong leg, basically.
A false sense of security.
Yeah, because what I say is, think about natural gas. You take it out of the ground, you use it, you burn it, and the carbon is sent back under the ground. So that is perfectly circular. If you look from a carbon perspective, you take it out and you bring it back at the same location. So that's a nice way of making it circular, but often people don't consider this as circular.
Yes, that is the core of this question, I think.
But then you get a discussion about carbon capture and utilization, CCU. This is used a lot, but the main problem is with carbon capture and utilization is that CO2 is near, it's not at the bottom, but near the bottom of the thermodynamical pit. So we need to put energy in it. Which
it
sounds
needs energy in order to,
Yeah, of course, we have to get out of the, and at this moment in time, we live in an era where we have shortage of renewable energy for it. So because there's not enough renewable energy, then you can better use this renewable energy where you get the biggest bang for your buck. So if I would in the Netherlands, at this moment in time, I would use all my electricity for mobility application. You get the biggest bang for your buck for it. Unfortunately, not everybody has recognized that. And from the EU, for instance, is a lot of emphasis is going to happen for carbon capture utilization, where you convert CO2 into kerosene for planes. But that goes completely against thermodynamics. But there's a political decision. That's not true science. That's not something which I would advise. Okay.
As a chemical engineer myself, I did in my thesis electrochemical conversion of CO2 and into methane and ethane and the products, and I understand fully how difficult it is. Have these things.
Yeah, that's by the way, lovely topic to do your thesis on. But think about now CO2 to methane. If you look at the molecule of CO2, that's 73% oxygen. You have to get all this oxygen out. Basically, you have a very expensive water factor. That's what you have. And you produce a methane, which is a very low value, which is a gas and with a very low molecular mass. So
very low and like micro.
No, but yeah, it was at a certain moment in time a big hobby, especially in Germany. They did a lot of studies towards that. But the thing is often with science, we all follow each other. So somebody said it, and then you see all kind of research, people doing power to methane for it. Well, if you ask yourself, is it a smart thing? And the answer is then, perhaps not. So my advice at the end of this, because I am now really overstepping my boundaries, is especially to you all, is be critical. try to understand what's a myth, what's a reality, and what's a hype. So especially in a field like hydrogen, just naming one. Really, myth, hype, reality. And you can be really surprised that a lot of people, let's call them experts, are promoting myths and hypes, and the reality is sometimes quite different.
Perfect. Earl, thank you so much for everything, for the entire talk, for the questions. We hope everybody had the same informative session that I did, and I believe the rest of us did. On that note, I would like to say that we have a feedback platform for the event. This is a feedback QR. You can scan it and you can say if you had an interesting time, if you liked how the entire event transpired. And we would love to hear your opinion in that all over the topics and in general. Personally, I'd like to thank you, Earl, and I'd like to thank everybody that attended. We are finished with the International Symposium, and to me, it was an excellent experience. I hope to you as well. It was excellent as well. We hope to see you next year in that regard, because apparently this will happen again. So, goodbye for now. And it was a lovely, lovely, lovely hosting. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
All right.